So my name, again, is Michael Charles Smith. I'm a percussionist with the Portland Columbia Symphony, and I'm also a marimba soloist. You know, and those CDs that he was mentioning were CDs of just me playing marimba. Some of them is classical. Some of them have multiple parts, like the Nutcracker has 4 parts of marimba happening at once, you know, to cover all the different parts that are happening in the orchestra. And so I do that. I also compose for film and documentaries. And I teach marimba classes, and I teach drum set, and I teach guitar, and I teach songwriting, and I produce people. I'm also an instrument maker. I've made this marimba. This is a box drum that I've made. I've made these triangles and some of the other instruments you see here, which is a lot of different things. I'm also, the joke was going to be, I'm a professional stick twirler, because I twirl sticks every once in a while. But, so I do a lot of different things, and I'm just a full-time musician. So to be a full-time musician in this day and age, you have to do many, many, many different things, you know, to make a living. So what I want to talk to you about tonight is rhythm and how the beat moves us, you know, and why we're so drawn to rhythm and music. And since I played a few Thursdays ago at I think it was the first one in the concert series, I played a little marimba in the background, if anybody was here for that. So I wanted to do something a little bit different today, so I brought everything in the kitchen sink to kind of explain some of the different percussion instruments and what they're used for. And then also, I'm kind of an amateur, not scientist, but I really get into the science aspect of music and how it affects us and our brains, and why we're so drawn to it, why it moves us so much, which is probably part of the reason you guys are here, to hear a speech, you know, about music. But so I want to talk and tell you a little story really quickly of an experience I had just recently. I play at the Portland airport 4 days a week, and this year I was asked to be honored at this banquet for out at the Sheraton out by the Portland airport. And it was this dinner, you know, and I always get social anxiety, and normally I don't talk in front of people, but you know, you have to sit by people, you have an assigned seat, and you sit by people you don't know, and you have this dinner, and you have to dress up and try to have conversations with people, and so I go in and sit down, and I'm like one of the first people to sit down at all the tables, and then everybody kind of floods in, and they had the MC was actually I think he was from Channel 8, you know, and he was telling jokes and like trying to liven up the crowd a little bit. And everyone seemed kind of like, you know, in business attire and very reserved and just kind of sitting there. And I looked down at the program, and it says musical guest, March 4th. Has anybody heard of March 4th? So let me explain what happened. So March 4th, they are a 20 to 30 person marching band, you know, with a full horn line, 5 drummers, you know, bass player, you know, flutes, all these horns, everything. They have people on stilts, you know, that are, you know, about, you know, 10 feet off the ground, you know, and they're dancing, and they have dancers and all this stuff. And so he invites them to come in to play a song right at the beginning of the conference. And everybody's like, what is going on? You know, like everyone was, you know, probably like thinking in their heads, this is some crazy, you know, Portland-esque thing that's happening right now. And it wasn't really like totally into it. And the announcer was making jokes about how they were dressed, you know, and like, you know, and it just had like a weird vibe. Like all of a sudden the circus came in, and everybody was like, what's the circus doing here? This is the wrong spot for this. You know, and everyone is dressed in business clothes. So one of the drummers just counts it off, you know, and they start playing. And within 30 seconds, I mean, there's people smiling. There isn't a person that's like not moving in the whole place, you know. And by the time they got done playing, there was a Congo line of all these people, like going around the room. I could barely contain myself. I wanted to, jump up and start dancing. And, I was trying to think of a way to start my talk tonight, and I mean, that explains it better than anything I could. I mean, it didn't matter what you were feeling at any time. That rhythm or whatever started happening just grabbed those people from their chairs, Like if they were like, oh, I don't want to be here, this is, corporate dinner, blah, 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 I mean, it didn't matter what was going on in their head at the time. Once the music started, and it was mostly just percussion at first, but after about a minute, I mean, it totally changed everything. It totally changed everybody's mood, totally changed the whole mood of the room. For the rest of the night, we didn't listen to speakers. We were talking to the person next to us about how cool that was. And and we just couldn't wait till they came back out again, and I mean, the whole night, I couldn't believe how cool Portland Airport was for hiring March 4th to come in and play. I mean, it was like, So, so what were they doing right? I mean, what was so engaging, I mean, what is going on when that happens? When all of a sudden, all these people that are, reserved and stuff are all of a sudden dancing and just having a great time, And so I want to try just a quick thought experiment with you guys. And in the spirit of controlling people, what if I said to you, I could control everybody in the whole room, and I could align your brain waves perfectly together, and I could have you guys align your movements together just by making five quick movements and 5 quick sounds. You probably think I was crazy. So what I want you guys to do is just put your hands up and get ready to clap. And I want you to clap twice, and you are going to know exactly where to clap and when to clap by the rhythm that I'm going to play to you right now. And many people probably already know what this is, but here it is. I was really hoping everyone was going to know that, but yeah, how many people don't know that? So this is something that, like, say an alien is like looking from outside the room, and I just did, and then everybody, was aligned and they clapped exactly at the same time. I mean, you guys knew exactly the break to wait, and you knew exactly when to come in. How do you explain that? That's crazy. We take that for granted. And there is a whole science out here it's called the cognitive neuroscience of music. There's 300 people, full-time scientists, neurobiologists or neuroscientists that are studying the effects of music, on the human brain, and studying music and all these different aspects. So I thought that was incredible that there's 300 people that, I don't know how they're getting paid. They're probably like professors at schools or whatever studying this stuff, so we can nerd out on it. But I think a good start of saying that many people don't know the physics of sound and how that actually works. So I just want to explain just briefly. I don't want to get too nerdy on you. But sound is basically, like if I hit this, what's happening is the vibration of this instrument is vibrating all the molecules of air in the room and sending waves, directly out in all directions, right? And so the waves come out, they're coming at you at 768 miles per hour, right? And they're coming at different frequencies. Like say if I play the marimba here, like this low bar, that low note is, you're just getting waves that are farther apart, that are hitting your eardrum. And the higher notes, those notes are just, those waves are closer together. And what your eardrum does is it takes those and discriminates them and starts electrical impulses in your brain, right? And so every sound has a specific set of overtone series. And the reason that if I play, say, a C here, this is just a C natural, and I come over here and I play a C on these little bells, right? That's the exact same note and pitch. That C is vibrating at let's say 500 vibrations per second, and when it hits your ear. There's no difference between this one and this one as far as the fundamental frequency. However, what makes them different to our ears and how we're perceiving them is called timbre. And that is, like if I have a marimba here, and this is a simulated glockenspiel or electrical bell set, right? When I'm hitting either one, the different overtones that come and hit your ear, like this has metal, metal bar, so you're gonna have higher frequencies that maybe aren't ringing that hit your ear exactly at the same time. And the reason that our brain can hear just this and hear all those overtones at the same time, there could be 6 or 7 different frequencies that you're hearing from that note. When I hit that, your brain logs all those frequencies in a bundle together when they happen at the same time. And if I try to hit these 2 notes, they're too far apart, but if I tried to hit them together, I couldn't hit them close enough together physically to make our brain not be able to hear the difference between the 2. You would still be able, within a millisecond, our brain can distinguish the difference between me hitting that note and hitting this note. So I'd have to hit them just perfectly together for you to think that that's one instrument. Does that make sense? It's as if a trumpet was playing a note and then a violin played the same note. If they played them exactly at the same time, they'd have to hit them just perfectly together for it to sound. For your brain to distinguish it, it's almost impossible to play them together. And then you have spatial relationships. So what we're able to do now, we have all this imaging, within the last 25 years. We have fMRI, which is the functional magnetic resonance scanners, and those track all the blood flow to our brains. So what they can do is they put people in these machines, and they put master musicians, they put composers, they put Sting. I don't know if you know The Police, the band The Police. They put Sting in one, and it was pretty interesting. One of the documentaries I have in my little sheet there that I handed out to you, they kind of show the interview after he went into the machine. But so they play songs that are familiar to people, and they play songs that people don't know, and they play different sounds, and they see what parts of the brain are lighting up. And so we also have EEG, which detects, the electrical impulses within your brain. And when, say, I play this C, and again, we're just going to say that that's 500 cycles per second, or 500 vibrations are happening in 1 second. There is a part in your brain that vibrates, and if you just look at the EEG scanner, it vibrates at 500 cycles per second. It just lights up, on that scanner when it hits your eardrum. It's incredible. That representation happens right in your brain at the same time. So they've used this in all different things. They played specific rhythms to people. And one part of our brain, when we play a rhythm, like if I play, I'm just going to play a simple rhythm, like this. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I've actually aligned, just by playing for a couple of measures, everyone's brain waves in the whole room. Your brain is going like this, with the music, right? So we've started aligning our brain waves. Another part of our brain, if I leave one of these notes out and just go 1, 2, 3, rest, 1, 2, 3, rest, there's another part of our brain that flashes even when there's not a note playing. It's crazy. It's like an internal pulse metronome in your brain. And they're totally separate parts of your brain. So there's that part of your brain that fills in that note is keeping it's like your inner timekeeper, and it just happens naturally. They've hooked up babies, that are like 7 and 8 months, they can't even talk, and their brains show the same kinds of results on that adults do. Even babies that are 7 and 8 months old, if they play a melody, they get to like the 7th or 8th note of the melody, and the 4th time they decide to change one of the notes, the brainwave changes, and it's like, that's wrong, and they can't even talk. We were built for this. We're just totally built for this. So I want to talk a little bit about the emotion in music, and I'll get to playing here in a minute. There's a lot of things that we perceive. Actually, I'm sorry, I skipped one thing. I want to play some of these triangles for you, and I think I've lost my little beaters. Another way that we distinguish the difference between timbre, when I hit a percussion instrument, and this is super interesting too, I think, but I have I have cases and cases of mallets and sticks, and I can take one instrument and I can hit it with about 10 different, different kinds of sticks, and you're gonna hear something totally different, and it's gonna pull out totally different overtones. Like if I hit these triangles, right, with just a really thin little piece of this coat hanger. This is a good thing to have in your percussion case. Or I've got a thicker brass beater, right? It excites way more of the overtones. You kind of hear that? So we can distinguish all these. If I hit it with wood, it sounds totally dead. But you almost hear it, you can hear the wood too vibrating. I've always found that super interesting. So composers, musicians, we just totally exploit this. This software we believe to have evolved, along with language. How we can, we have an immense, memory for voices. And that is your same discriminator in your brain that does voices is the same that discriminates, with different kinds of instruments and things like that. If you close your eyes, or if you ever go watch, a Pixar movie, a lot of us, some of the voices that we're familiar with, and we've seen them in TV shows, like you go watch Toy Story. How many people have seen that? You can hear Tom Hanks' voice right away. And how is that? That's crazy. We know hundreds and hundreds of voices, without even looking at the person. And they could be talking at the same monotone thing, It's just something that we take, for granted, and composers just totally exploit that, and have for hundreds of years and not been able to explain why. They've just done it and moved people like that. We have so much memory for tempos. Like if I sang, dun, 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 you would go, that's way too slow, and you might not even be a musician. It's like, dun, 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 right? This is 120. That's one of our favorite march tempos. You could sing Happy Birthday, and everyone usually starts it at a similar tempo, and how many people have been in maybe at a concert, maybe at a Columbia Symphony concert, and gotten the chills, or been moved, just to cry or just overwhelmed. I think I was Friday night. We were playing Capriccio Espagnol, and we're in the second movement, and of course this horn melody comes in, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. And I just right in the first note came in, and just chills went right up my arm, and it was the coolest. It's why I play in groups like that, because it's such a cool experience to be sitting right there next to them and hear that. And what's really happening within our brain is our blood flow to those receptors that function for emotion, like the amygdala, the midbrain. The blood flow increases, and we've seen that on MRI. And the reward system in our brain just starts going crazy and releases dopamine. It's the same thing when we've been dancing, we hear a good beat, and we're get involved and start moving our body. It's just like the same thing. You go home and you eat some ice cream before you go to bed. Your body releases dopamine. In the same kind of way. And so music has that same effect on us. They talk about. Oh, to Bolero? Oh, such a good piece. Yeah, Ravel. Yeah, he keeps modulating, and it's you have this particular rhythm, and he's exploiting that part of us. Like we get that pulse into our brain, and we just hear it. And I'd have to look into it, and I know that they know what they're doing, but we've just recently been able to explain what's really happening. When we get to those points where it just gets that point at the end where it's just, in Bolero. And everyone's like, your blood pressure is raising probably, and you're like, you can't, it takes time for those composers to build us up, and then change things just subtly, and then they surprise us, or they don't, or they give us what we really want, in the end, and then our amygdala goes crazy, and if you look at the little diagram, I was gonna, you can kind of do your own research later, but those parts of your brain just start releasing, all these different types of dopamine, and it's just incredible to watch and to look at the brain scans. So, or if they want to have fear, that's something where you would release adrenaline, and there's no better way to do that than like hearing those strings in Psycho, the Bernard Herrmann score, which is just brilliant. You cannot hear that, and if you have seen the movie and not see this, and not see the, and not picture that in your mind. I mean, it's so vivid, and so we have, within us, we have, even non-musicians, we have this immense memory, for music and melodies, and songs and lyrics. I mean, we are all, even not being, if we aren't musicians, experts, of what we like and what we don't like, what really releases those chemicals and rewards us. They've done a lot of studies, and there's a really great movie that I actually put there about playing music to Alzheimer's patients, the music from their teen years, because we have all these emotional tags. They get tagged to those particular melodies. And people that haven't talked, in years, they put these headphones on and play some of that music, and their eyes open, and they just start talking about, this is the song that, and they start remembering things that they, hadn't talked about, and remembering people that were around them. I mean, it's pretty incredible, what music can do. And we're just now starting to understand that the last parts in Alzheimer's of our brain, are those the same last parts of our brain that have that music, the memory for music, and it's just incredible to see people light up. And so I encourage you, on the sheet, I did have a list of some viewing things and some books, if you guys are interested. So another huge thing, you can't really look at this stage and not see an instrument that's not associated with some sort of dance, right? Or dance music, and one of the books that I did a lot of the research for this talk on, he says, this is a direct quote from the book, in every society that we know of, music and dance are inseparable, in the archaeological record, they're just inseparable. We have just, in the last few hundred years, just started listening to music in chairs and not really participated. And it used to be, these very cultural, bringing everyone together, and everyone would play, and it would be a very communal thing. And so you see this cowbell, this sound, depending on what Latin instrument, what Latin groove you're going to play. A lot of Cuban music. You cannot play Cuban music without a cowbell. And I've recently learned this, writing for a short documentary on this art installation in Cuba. I sent the music in, and it didn't have a cowbell in it. And he's like, this doesn't sound, I don't know what's going wrong, but it doesn't sound Cuban at all. And I went and listened to a couple of examples, and I'm like, oh, now everything that I listened to had cowbell in it, and that's all I changed. I just went home and it just put quarter note cowbells, and it just, you know, and he was like, oh, this is perfect. And he couldn't even tell me what was different. He just knew all of a sudden it was Cuban. And we know that intuitively. He's not even, the director that I work with is not even a musician. And he just knew all of a sudden that it was right. You know, but we have specific rhythms that we play with certain dances. We have waltzes, you know, which is a 3-beat, like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, waltzes. We have the tango and bolero, and which is also a dance. The can-can, we have minuets, salsa, jigs, cha-cha-chas, and of course disco. And I know we were all there, right, in the 70s. And I was born in 78, so I was a baby. But so in different cultures, we used to have just tons of drummers, and we still do in Latin and Brazil. You know, we have these huge bachacadas, you know, that'll have, you know, 20 or 30 drummers, you know, or like March 4th, you know, that's one thing that they're doing right, you know, out of the many things that they're doing right. They've got multiple drummers. It's very exciting to watch. It's a communal thing. You don't have to be a total expert to play along, right? So I want to play a little bit for you. Well, actually, I want to start by explaining one different, I'm going to go through 4 different examples of different cultures and their music. One instrument that I couldn't get here is tabla, which is a Indian instrument. And it's such an amazing instrument. I studied it for 2 years when I was at University of Oregon. And this instrument, in North and South Indian music, the tabla drummers, I mean, they have their own language. Every single note that you play on these drums, it's just 2 drums. There's a tabla and there's a baya, which is a little bit bigger of a drum, and you play with your fingers, just like this. And if you've ever heard a Ravi Shankar album, you've heard tabla. And when I was studying tabla, you have to learn to say the syllable at the same time as you play it. And in doing this, you make a brain connection with those 2 things happening. You're taking language and music and putting it together, a specific sound. So when you have a syllable called da, or ter, or any of these specific syllables, you know exactly what they're going to sound like. And within a year of playing, I started being able to listen to tabla drummers, and I started hearing the language coming through. You know, you start just, every time you hear a syllable, and this is on a recording, I'm not even watching a drummer, you're actually hearing the drummers, you know. And what's really, another thing that's interesting, they have a tal, which is a specific rhythmic pattern, and the most common is a teen tal, and it's 4 measures, which are just groups of beats, and each measure has 4 beats in it, which is pretty much the same as any Western music, right? Any rock and roll has usually 4 measure phrases, and I'm going to see if I can remember the one that I used to play, the teen tal that I used to play. So I'm going to actually conduct, and I don't know how many people are familiar with conducting, but this is just a typical 4 pattern. 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and here we go. Da tere kita take 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 tere kita da. And then we start that same 4-bar phrase again, and then they start throwing embellishments in on it. But that is the basic structure of a teen tal. I just think it's so fascinating that there's that they have this specific language for playing. And it makes me really want to go get another set of tablas so that next time I can show you. Yeah, I know. I have source material, sir. No, yeah. Actually, it's really neat to look it up and to look up the teen tals, and you can actually look them up on Wikipedia. The one that I just said, you know, like I was trying to remember to see if I would be able to do it for you guys, and I went in, and it was actually written out right in there, you know, and a lot of times these guys can, they'll do it really slow, and they'll go da te de ki te take, right, and they'll go really slow, and then they'll double it. da tere kita tere kita taka tere kita, and then they'll triple it, da tere kita tere kita taka tere kita tere kita taka, right? And I just can't even do it. But they can go so fast with their mouth. They can say syllables just so quickly. It's incredible. Just spend a little time on YouTube and look up tabla players, and it's really neat. So I want to do a little bit of African drumming for you. And the African patterns that we have are incredible. They have these polyrhythms. And I'm going to build a couple different things over the top of a bass drum that I've recorded into this loop pedal right here. And what this loop pedal does is it allows me to, with control with my foot, it allows me to play that bass drum part through the speakers here. And then I'll be able to live record some rhythms over the top of the bass drum. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up, well, here's what the bass drum sounds like, just so we all know. This is a disco beat tempo. This is it's actually 117 beats per minute is what we're hearing right now. And that is the exact tempo of Billie Jean, Michael Jackson. So you can hear the bass line. If anybody, Michael Jackson fans. I'm going to put these headphones on so I can kind of get a good mix. So we've got this kind of what sounds like a bongo rhythm happening over the top of the beat. But what we're having, this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, over a 4 pattern. So we have, or you can count it like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it's almost like looking at one of those 3D images. You can actually hear this two completely different ways, the rhythm. You can hear it 4, like this, or you can hear it 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, like a waltz. And if you can almost switch in your brain and go back to the 4, just hearing it in 2. So now I'm going to add another part. Usually what they'll have a series of shakers. This is simulating a log drum, which is just, some of the first instruments were just logs, and they would just hit them with sticks, or bones or whatever was there. So this is just a 2-tone log drum that I made. Now we have a bell part that we usually have, and it's usually played on a higher bell. I'm just going to use a Latin cowbell right now, just to get this sound. Now I'm going to add a little bit of a shaker. So now we have all these things happening all at once, right? And it's, so I want you to really feel this quarter note pulse, the 117 beats per minute. And I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to see if you can still hear it. If you want, you can close your eyes. See if you can still hear this. So kind of focus in on the bass drum. Now I'm going to turn it off. Can you still hear it? Now you turn it back on. So, like I was talking about earlier, your brain is doing this on one side of your brain, right? Part of your brain is firing no matter what, whether this is there or not. The rest of your brain is kind of deciphering all of the timbral, or the all the different timbres that are happening. We have these low sounds, we've got the higher sounds. And so when we have the higher pitches in, and we take out that low part, you still hear it. Because your brain is doing it, whether you like it or not. Your brain. And you can actually, a lot of people just take that out completely. Okay, now Now I'm going to just give your ears a rest. And what I'm going to do is do a Brazilian pattern now. But I'm going to use the same exact bass drum beat. And I'm going to use the same instruments. Actually, I might use a clave instead. And, but I'm going to build a different pattern. And Brazilian rhythms like samba and batucada and all this, they work on, if the beat's here, it's like there's a lot of 16th note patterns that are happening. Right? So it's going to sound a little bit totally different. And see what you think. So here's the same bass drum. Here's my log drum. Now it's going to make this kind of sound like bongos. Oops. Okay, so can you still hear that bass drum? I'll turn it off. You can have all this chaos. We can still feel the beat. With our brains. Okay, bring the bass drum in. I'm gonna turn this off. I'm gonna totally screw with your braid. So this is the Afrin beat. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So it takes your brain about 1 or 2 measures to reconfigure, going from that African, right, to go back to the Latin groove. Oh, I think it's so cool. Some of my favorite music. I was in some other life. I was like, 15 in 1964 when all of the bossa nova and the Carlos Jobim, infusion into the American culture. Somehow, like, I have this affinity. Like, my favorite movie is from 1964, Dr. Strangelove. But anyway, moving on. I want to drastically change gears here and give a warning to everybody. I'm going to have you plug your ears in a second. So we've been talking about all these different cultures. One big, culture that we don't get to see a lot of, is this drum and fife, stuff during the Revolutionary War, which started many hundreds of years before in Sweden, actually. But these drums, this drum a good friend of mine made, talking with a guy that makes replications of Revolutionary War drums. This is such an interesting time for drumming because drummers not only woke everybody up in the morning, but they put you to bed, which is so weird. They told you to charge, they told you when you were going to surrender, they told you when it was time to eat, and the one reason that they did that is because, well, as you're going to find out, these drums are really loud, right? And you can hear them over miles and miles and miles. And one of the one of the things I always like to, keep in perspective is that we didn't have any radios or telephones or cell phones or, Twitter, or anything like that. They had to communicate. And, so not only did the drummers need to know what the rhythms were and play them, but the soldiers needed to understand what was happening and were able to discriminate, and these were non-musicians, the difference between all these different kinds of rhythms. So this drum is super fascinating. I'm a quarter Scottish, so I find this really interesting, but it's almost like a family crest. If you can see this, this one's just, he just kind of improvised, my buddy Ian. But all these little beads, like you would make these the same on every family member, or every particular part of that core, would have the same sort of crest that they would make on their drum, which is really interesting. So back in that time, you didn't have all the fancy tighteners and things like that. So you have just rope that are strung back and forth, and then you have these little tongue things that push down and tighten the head of the drum. So I'm going to show you just a couple of different things here. Let me tighten it real quick, and I'll give you enough warning so you can plug your ears a little bit because this is very loud. All right. Oops. So yeah, maybe turn my mic down because it's going to blow up right now. So they would wear the drum kind of off to the side like this. If you've been in a marching band and you've played snare, then you know that the drums are out here, now, because it makes a lot more sense. We have the technology to have harnesses and have the drums out. But they would march with the drum over here. And if you've seen drummers, you've maybe seen Buddy Rich, who's one of my favorite drummers of all time, one of the best drummers of all time. He plays with a stick like this, and it's called traditional grip. And this is developed for this, not for jazz drumming, and it just stayed along with the times as we've moved, throughout the centuries. Drummers still play traditional grip. But the reason that we started holding the sticks like this is because if you had to march with your arm like this, your arm would fall off. So they developed a way to hold the stick so you can play right here like that. And so something you might hear waking up in the morning, I'm going to play for you, and you might either want to plug your ears a little bit, but let's see if I can. Right? You might hear something like that. Wonderful way to wake up in the morning, I can just imagine it. But this is just another fascinating little example of a huge time in history and what rhythm has done. Sneak that back here. Okay, so I want to talk about just a little bit more science, and then I'll end. But there's a lot of controversy, a little bit. And I know you've heard the Mozart arguments, like you play Mozart to your kids and they're going to be smart and things like that. And then there's a report that just came out where it says Mozart doesn't help your kids be smart. And so many people just get terribly, get upset about all these studies that are coming out all the time. One of the debates now is, did music really have its roots? Was it an adaptive quality that we've evolved to become musicians? And there's arguments either way. You can obviously make your own conclusions, from what I'll tell you. But some of the archaeological history, I hate to say it, but some of the oldest instruments that we've found are actually flutes. They're these bone flutes, and they've recently been dated all the way back to 42,000 years ago. And there's other instruments that are actually go further back, and we still believe, or at least most archaeologists believe that drums were the first instruments. So yes, for percussion. fashion, right? Even though we don't have a lot of these artifacts, that are dating back there. But there is no tangible evidence, that language preceded music, and some of the the physical evidence points exactly to the opposite, that possibly, making sounds, and having music possibly was a part of communication or came before language. This is another part of the debate, But the archaeological record shows, and this is another quote from the Daniel Levitin book, that I strongly suggest that you read. The archaeological record shows an uninterrupted record of music making everywhere we find music in all eras at all times, which is incredible. So one of the things, Darwin came up, and we all know who Charles Darwin was. In 1860, when he published the book on the origin of species, he also postulated that that through sexual selection, that's where music falls under. Is that people become good musicians to be more attractive to their mate, and I love this argument because it's awesome. Because I read a whole bunch of studies, and I actually have listed them there. You can make your own, conclusions with any of this stuff. But a study finds that women prefer, intellectually creative men when they're younger and during the most fertile part of their cycle. They've actually studied this. I think it's incredible. But I always think of Mick Jagger and how attractive Mick Jagger is, but he has no problem getting all the ladies, right? And that is a testament to this whole idea. Trying to end funny here. So another thing, I am definitely living proof. My wife actually came up to me and asked me out while I was playing marimba on the street. I was on tour, and I happened to be in South Dakota. And we are now married and have a 2-year-old child and have another one on the way. So, this there's a really interesting bird in Australia, and it's called the bowerbird. Has anybody ever heard of the bowerbird? This is the most fascinating creature, probably, that I could think of. It's they create these huge elaborate structures that serve no purpose other than they have all these neat little trinkets and stuff like that, and they arrange them. The male birds, arrange them. And some of these you could actually climb into. They're that big that these little birds are creating. And the sole purpose of this is to attract a mate, And the females will come and walk down the middle and check out all the different bowers and pick the one that is the most aesthetically pleasing to them. The cameraman and in this documentary that I had watched, and I actually list it on my references, but they were trying to figure out how they're going to get a good shot of one of these birds, one of the female birds choosing one of the male birds. Well, you have to make, they didn't have enough cameras to put in all of the bowers, to catch this, this one thing. So they decided, they would just try to make their best guess, and they all tallied up and they picked this one bower. And it just so happens that we have the same aesthetic tastes as bowerbirds, female bowerbirds, because they picked the right one, and caught this wonderful footage, and it's so cute. They squawk and then they fly off into the woods together, So anyway, I just want us to all make some music together to end this. And I know some people are going to be a little bit shy about making some music, but I have a million instruments that I brought just in case we had 60 people to play some music together. Just a simple rhythm. But before I do that, I just want to, the reason that I've spent so much time talking about the science is because I think there's a better case for music than gets put out there, and when we have a lot of programs losing funding and we have a lot of, school programs losing funding and stuff like that. Science is what wins over the people that aren't musicians, sometimes, and the science of music is just undeniably amazing, and hopefully I've touched on enough of it and not bored you to death, that it's kind of, that you will go out and be invigorated and want to do some more research on your own in your own little, fields. I don't know if anybody here, there are musicians in the audience, but, to do some of this research and to, gain some momentum for the case for music, because one of my favorite scientists, still, claims to this day that it's auditory cheesecake, that it's just piggybacked on language, and that music doesn't have, it's just ice cream, it's just so we could feel good or something like that. It doesn't have all these qualities that are beneficial, to us, and hopefully with some of the stuff I've told you tonight, if you had any doubts, so I don't know if we should do questions and then try to play some music together, or if we should play some music and then let's play a little music. Yeah, let's do it. Okay. I don't know if you want me to bring an instrument to you, but I've got a bunch of lovely instruments here, shakers, and I can just bring some out to you. Let me sneak out here. Oop. Does anybody want to play the jawbone? You want to play the jawbone? Okay, I'll show you. Okay. This instrument is called a cuijadas, and actually when I went to MetroEast, I played this and probably freaked out the Cindy a little bit, maybe a little bit. She was a little freaked out about the donkey jawbone. So you hold it in your left hand if you're right-handed, and you usually just hit it like this, and the teeth chatter. All the the skin obviously has been removed, but isn't that crazy? It's one of my favorite. Actually, does anybody know John Cage? Do you know who John Cage was? Wrote 4 minutes, 33 seconds. He's a pretty famous avant-garde composer, right? But I bought this for that piece, and it gets borrowed every year by the percussion studio at Portland State University, because they don't own one there. And so they come, hey, Mike, we need the jawbone again. We're playing Third Construction, which is the name of the piece, And so here we go. There we go, jawbone. So, yeah, hold it in your... That's it. Okay, cool. So now, let's see. This one's super fun. This one's claves, and you hold one in one hand. Betsy, yeah? You want to do a claves? There we go. All right. Okay, now we have a cowbell. I'm going to give you a quieter stick, because I know the cowbell's so loud. Here's another shaker. Somebody wants a little shaker? I love this little egg shaker. Here we go. The cowbell. So you just hold it with one hand, and we're going to hit right there. All right. And then we have a wood block. Ooh. Yes.
What would you say the collective expense of a percussion section is for a symphony orchestra?
Oh, for a symphony? Oh, man.
Your own collection is amazing, but
Yeah.
just like the concert we just played.
Oh, I mean, that'd be at least, 20 grand maybe. I mean, 15 to 20 for the concert we just, well, if you include timpani, it could be 50,000, because timpani are going to be 20 grand at least. But I mean, it depends on what kind of concert you're playing. If you have a drum set there, that's another 3 grand, If you have nice cymbals, that's another grand on top of that, I mean, it's a good marimba. A good classical marimba is going to be the model that I play on and that I prefer is about 10 grand now to buy a brand new. And I own 2 marimbas now. And I leave one at the airport because it's just so hard to transport it back and forth. And I finally got another one, super happy. But so, I mean, with percussion, a lot of people, you can spend a lot of money on a violin, yeah. And you can hear the difference. timbre is the reason. We can hear the difference between a Stradivarius and a lesser model. But I actually, just triangles, just a triangle like this could be $140. So I decided to make my own, So this is a log drum. This is a multi-tone log drum. Do you want to try one?
Oh, wow.
There we go.
Cage, the
Yeah.
prepared piano guy.
Yeah, well, yeah, prepared piano. He does the prepared piano. You have 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which is just silence. You actually sit down at the piano, you put the music up, and you turn the page. Sit there for about 45 seconds, and then you turn the page again. You sit there. And I will never forget Charles Dowd, who was one of my first teachers at the University of Oregon. He passed away some years ago, and they did a concert for him, a memorial concert, and they put all of his timpani out and put his rack out, and put his hat on the rack, and had his shoes out there, and put his timpani mallet case out, and the assistant percussion professor. It gives me chills just thinking about it, but puts the music up, lays the drums down, opens the music, and just stands there. And the entire audience starts crying. I mean, it was one of the most powerful, pieces, and they used that in his memorial. And I guess they do that quite often. That piece on its own is kind of ridiculous, but it gives you time to kind of reflect, and it's just, he had a lot of pieces that were interesting like that, kind of breaking new territory. I have, let's see, I've got another one. Sorry, this is taking longer than I thought. These are super fun to make. So I've got another log drum. Does anybody want another log drum? Okay, cool. And we need one more instrument, right? So what we're gonna do, this is gonna be super slow. What I wanna do is slowly add everybody. And so I'll just try to point to you. And you actually just play chord notes along with me. So it'll just be 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then. Good. See, we're naturals. Yeah. Perfect. So right now, all your brain waves are doing the same thing. Oh, I forgot somebody. I'm so sorry. You want to play this? Yeah, you got to try this.
All right.
Just boom, boom. Yeah. Okay. And if you're feeling the love, I want you to actually add some notes. Try some eighth notes. Yeah. 1 and 2. Yeah. Okay, who isn't smiling right now? Nobody. Mind control. Mind control. Okay, so we can start. I want to start having everybody slowly leave what you came in. Keep everybody play, and we'll just slowly come out. So we'll stop. You can kind of hear all the different sounds now, kind of coming in. See, you can hear all these different sounds. It's incredible. Good job. Awesome. See, it takes you over completely. Just now, you were using every single part of your brain. Every single part. You were preparing to do things. You were moving your body. You were listening. You were using your visual cortex. Every part of your brain would have been lighting up if you had been in an fMRI scanner. Yes. 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 It's good in so many different things. You can look up music therapy, you know, and they're using it for people that have attention deficit disorder, you know, that, you know, slower tempos and doing something like what we just did calms people. But it also, it releases, you know, different chemicals, you know, like you will just by doing this together be a closer group of people. It's undeniable. I mean, you play music with someone, and it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be the most intricate thing. You know, music is for everyone. You know. Yes, yes. Is this your wife? Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So I look at this, and I always think, you know, back to the Bowerbird. This is my Bower. This, you know, this musical thing, and it actually ended up working for me. But so we could do questions.
We have a couple of minutes for a couple of questions. I see a gentleman over here. Wait, hold on, please.
Yeah, I got a question, Mike. You had your foot on the foot pedals there.
Oh, yeah.
And you
Yes.
were accumulating different sounds as you went along.
Yes.
What does that do? Is that like a synthesizer, and it synthesizes,
Oh, you know,
or what?
That's a really good question. You know, I'm a little nervous, you know, and I maybe didn't explain it very well too. But what this does is on the left part here, I have that bass drum is recorded in that we were listening to. And what I did was I actually played every single recording and recorded multiple tracks on top of this bass pedal, right? So every time I was hitting the pedal, I was hitting record or stop record. So basically, all this stuff that we did, I did all that live. You watched me record all of that live in front of you and build it up, you know, so it's, there we go. So basically what this does is in a live setting, a musician can sound like 20 people if he wants to, you know, so it's a really neat tool. It's called a loop station. Yeah, so it provides a loop of music, and then you can record more loops on top of it. And I use it live at the airport. When I'm playing like quartet music, like Tchaikovsky or something like that, I have the other three parts of the quartet playing through the loop pedal, through a big PA system like we have set up here, and then it kind of adds to, it makes me sound like 4 people at one time. That's a great question.
Other questions?
I have 2 questions, actually. Number 1, do you know Jimmy Free?
Jimmy Free, I know him very well.
He's great.
He
saved my life at the airport once.
He did?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. I will tell him next time I see him. He moved down to L.A. and
That's all right.
Yeah.
I have several of his
Oh, you do?
albums, Yeah.
Yeah.
The second question is, how do you put deaf people into this equation about how sound changes your brain? If you're deaf and you can't hear the sound, how does that work?
That's a good question, you know, and I'm sure there's a percussionist named Evelyn Glennie who is deaf, and she is the highest paid percussionist in the world. She's actually incredible, and there's a documentary called Touch the Sound, you know, and I actually should have put that on that list, but she is incredible. She actually plays with no shoes on, and she can feel the vibrations through her feet and know when to come in, which is just crazy to me to think about. But yeah, one of the best percussionists, you know, and I actually, before I was married, I actually, at a conference full of people, asked her out, sort of, like I asked her a couple questions, because I was sort of in love with her for a long time. But Evelyn Glennie is her name, Evelyn Glennie. I could write it down for anybody, and check out her documentary, Touch the Sound. It's incredible, and it will probably answer more questions than I could than that.
Other questions? Time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Yes.
Do we know how early in world civilization the relationship between mathematics and music, when that was? I mean, I assume the music comes first, or it came first, but all of that science behind it, is there any?
It's, you know, from what I know, which isn't such a small fraction, and I've been studying this for years, you know, but it depends on the math that you're talking about, I think, you know, because the music and math that's innate within us, is a lot of the frequencies and the overtone series, and I could go into that for you. But there's certain vibrations per second, and we can hear when they're doubled, and that's an octave, and there's stuff that's innate within us that we can understand and totally take it for granted, But as far as complex musical structure and math, and harmony, yeah. Yes, being aware of it and like studying it, I could not tell you when that actually started coming in. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. It was like, oh, I fell and my head hit this log, and oh, wow, it sounded cool, or hey, I had this board that was across this hole in the ground, which is basically the first marimba. It was just a board over a hole in the ground, and somehow the hole in the ground, amplified the sound, and we didn't understand that. But I can tell you the exact physics of that. So this bar is tuned to a C. This is about 2.5 feet long, right? I don't know, maybe 2 feet. Let's just call it 2 feet, right? For this C. So I'm going to make this tube exactly 8 feet, or 1/4 of the length of the wave. So if this wave length is 8 feet long, I'm going to make my tube exactly 2 feet. And it amplifies it so much. I can actually show you that. I have just a tube and a bar. But you hit it, and if you just hit the bar by itself, it sounds like nothing. I mean, it just sounds really thin. Yeah. And when you put that tube underneath it, and it's really specific, right to 1/4 of the length of the wave, is what amplifies the note. Does that answer part of your question? There's so much that's unknown from early, because we don't have any written history going back that far,
But first of all, let me thank Michael for coming tonight and sharing with us a lot about the science of music, a lot of which we really don't know or understand, but you understand and know a lot more than many of us do. I appreciate your sharing with us. And I want to thank all of you for coming this evening and helping to support the program tonight. I would remind you that the last program in our Third Thursdays series is next month, April 16. It will be a dance-oriented program with Whitebird, and the gentleman who started the Whitebird dance group will be here to share with us in the last program of the season. And we'll be exploring other options perhaps for another year. But our last program is April 16th. So thank you, Michael, again for being here. Thank you, folks, for coming. Thank you, our
thanks for having
sponsors
me.
who helped us tonight. Have a good evening.